Hello, my darlings. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, my name is Maria. Welcome. This is a channel about spirituality. Please subscribe below. Today, I wanted to talk to you guys about the sun. If you have been with me for some time, you know that I love this topic. There have been some massive shifts around solar consciousness, over the past year, actually. And so a lot has shifted, a lot has changed. And I've been getting questions about the sun and, you guys needed some clarity. The sun is one of the topics in my book, 72 Keys to Manifestation. And so a lot of you who have been reading the book, have been reaching out to me personally. And I figured today I'm going to make a little bit of a refresher video and a big picture overview of what's happening with the sun currently, and also what consciousness is now inside of it. So just that's the agenda. I think the most important thing, and I apologize if this is repetitive for some of you, but we have a lot of new viewers, so some context is paramount. The sun is a proxy for source consciousness in our third dimensional world. In fact, when the Matrix was created, right, it was created through the resource of source, no pun intended, as well as according to the blueprints of the great architect of the Matrix. However, the architect and his mind, shall we say, is a lot more present in the fabric of existence of the Matrix, and source consciousness is actually further removed away from the system. So source consciousness is an observer, as it relates to our world. And what is so special about source consciousness is the fact that Source is able to hold an infinite amount of perspectives. We as humans can hold one perspective. Our higher self can hold multiple perspectives of each of its projections, right? It has my perspective, and my higher self has a perspective of every other life that it's ever lived, et cetera, et cetera. So my higher self, as well as your higher self, has a more expanded perspective compared to my limited perspective. Source consciousness is able to hold all of perspectives all at the same time. As such, source consciousness is the only being in the universe that holds on to the truth, and everything else is just a facet of that truth, right? Or a fraction of that truth, or a fracture of that truth, which essentially makes it a perspective, not to call it a lie, but a perspective instead of something that is true. So the concept and the construct of suns and a network of suns has been created so that source consciousness can oversee the happening in the Matrix without actually being in it. It's almost like a vantage point. Every sun is a vantage point, or like a local office for source consciousness that allows source consciousness to maintain its infinite perspectives and maintain its prerogative as an observer instead of an active participant. And because of that, remain objective. So that's number one thing that is really, really important to get clear about suns, right? Like suns or, certain stars that are considered suns have that same function. So essentially all of these, let's refer to them as suns. All of these beings are scattered around the universe with the same exact purpose, to almost give eyes to source consciousness so that source consciousness can observe our reality and be closer to us, because vibrationally source is really removed from a third dimensional world. And the concept of the sun, our localized sun, or the structure of the sun, gives source consciousness an ability to stretch itself into infinitely small worlds and infinitely small perspectives, and being able to do so automatically almost, and really in real time, if that makes sense. However, and that is the beauty of the whole genius of what the sun actually is. It is not just a projection of source consciousness. If that was the case, it would be really, really easy. In fact, every local sun it's almost like, think of it as the office of the president of the neighboring planets or the solar system that it is overseeing. And there is a president-elect, almost like a being, a soul usually, that is selected for each of the individual suns for a time being, so that that soul can merge its energies with the energies of source consciousness in a very localized place in the universe, and could help, teach, guide, nourish, and nurture all of the beings within that local solar system. Does that make sense? So every sun is not created equal, because every sun is a symbiotic relationship between source consciousness and one other being. It's usually one, as a general rule, that was elected for a time being, temporarily, to come descend into this time-space reality and temporarily preside upon the solar system. Now, when I say our solar consciousness has turned feminine, what I mean is that the current president of the sun, and I apologize for even using this terminology. I know it kind of sounds funny, but this is the closest proxy that I have in the English language in the constraints of a 3D reality to explain to you what I mean. So let's just go with the analogy of the president. So the newly elected president, by the way, this happened during summer solstice or June solstice, because I know not everybody lives in the Northern Hemisphere, of last year. Our solar consciousness flipped female. And usually, and when I say that, let's take this with a grain of salt. 40% of the solar consciousness is always going to be the source, no matter where you go, about 40%. And that is a very fixed parameter. And that's why suns get to maintain a lot of their physical characteristics, despite the fact that, souls are in and out there all the time. 60% of the consciousness of the sun is contributed by the visiting soul, or the president-elect, if you will. And that 60% is what is now feminine within our local solar system. It used to be that 60% was masculine, and now it is feminine. For those of you that have read my book, and that is why there's so much confusion. When I wrote the book, when I channeled the book, our local sun consciousness was masculine. So the 60% was masculine. And that's why I very often refer to our local sun as the father sun in the book. Then things changed mid last year after I launched my book. And then sometimes sometimes the things that are happening in, I get updates when they happen, right? Like I don't always get an advance notice. And then they're like, and the sun consciousness is not feminine. I'm like, okay, great. What does this mean? I was asking the same questions. It means a lot of good things, actually. First, let me relieve some of the pressure. 100% of the information that is written in the book still works for the next 100 years. The next 100 years is a transitional period between the old solar consciousness and the new solar consciousness. So if you guys plan to read this book 120 years from now, maybe that information is going to get old. If you're reading it right now, you're perfectly good and you're perfectly safe. Also, remember how 40% of the sun consciousness, of the sun energy, is source, and source has equal measures of masculine and feminine. So if you're going to our local sun for the masculine energies, it has it plenty, because source consciousness has an infinite amount of any kind of energy you could possibly want. So it has the perfect divine masculinity and it has the perfect divine femininity, all within that one beautiful star in our sky. Now, when the feminine consciousness, the female consciousness, or shall we say the soul that identifies as female at this point in time, joined itself with our local sun, what ended up changing is the solar matrix. The solar matrix is this construct that essentially runs this world. Well, there are two matrices that we should be concerned with: the solar matrix and the lunar matrix. Both are impacting our planet. Obviously, the lunar matrix is a localized matrix. It only works on planet Earth. The solar matrix is a matrix that operates within the solar system. What does it actually mean if I were in layman terms? It's like getting a new house or perhaps doing a renovation in your home. That is the change in the solar matrix. By the way, every solar consciousness gets to rebuild the matrix. That is the entire point of this. It's kind of like growing a new skeleton inside of your body while your tissues and cartilages remain the same. I know, kind of a gross analogy, but how about how about a better analogy? Let's say that there is the White House where the president lives, right? Imagine if there was a new president and they're like, okay, let's get rid of this old White House and I'm going to build myself like a Cinderella castle and we're going to call that a White House. So essentially when the solar matrix goes through a transition, that is what's happening in our immediate vicinity. So part of you have been feeling crazy energy shifts depending on how sensitive you are for like literally more than even the past year, for like years. And some of you even started like in 2012. And it's part of the reason for that is because when the solar matrix is about to shift, there is that transition period. And the old matrix has to die away for the new matrix to come through. And of course, because the sun impacts everything that we do, literally like source consciousness, like it's the god or goddess in the sky, right? It impacts us on so many levels. Obviously, when the sun is going through such a massive shift, we're going to feel it in our physical bodies. We're going to feel it in our energy bodies. We're going to feel it emotionally, mentally, spiritually, all of the above, like you name it. And so we have been feeling it, right? So when the solar matrix shifts, everything shifts. It's like we had one North Star and all of a sudden we have this other North Star. Like we were marching to the left and now we're going to march to the right, if that makes sense. A set of values changes, right? So it's like the new president is like a new being. The previous president may have been like, okay, patriarchy all the way. This being is like, no, I think I want equality. So, the rules of the game have shifted, make no mistake. Now, everything is really subtle, like with energy. And by the way, when a solar consciousness joins, it may join for like 1 million years. It depends, right? Usually from at least 100,000 years to like 1 million years plus. So, the shifts are very gradual and they're very slow. And at the same time, they're very meaningful, right? So like nothing is going to shift overnight. But it's like having a female president. Things are going to shift. Things are already starting to shift. It's going to get a lot easier for femininity, not just on planet Earth, but in a more global sense in the solar system. You would notice that a lot more planets in the solar system skew masculine than they do than skew feminine. And that again, over time is going to change because if it is the great feminine that is nurturing all of these planets, and think of the sun as the teacher. So the number one teacher for our solar system right now is feminine, is a female, is a she. So usually students start emulating the teacher. So what does this mean? All of these masculine energies are going to start being balanced with feminine, right? Because they're like, oh, now she's the North Star, right? So a lot is going to change and a lot more. Yeah, like it's a whole new regime, you guys. Things are a lot more gentle going forward, not yet. But, in general, the energies, once we go through and complete the crazy transition period, which like I said, is 100 years. Once that's said and done, it's going to be really smooth sailing and the energies are very, very gentle already, but they're going to become even more so because the sun takes time to anchor itself. And that's a terminology that I use a lot because, I don't know, it's kind of like when you move into a new place and it's an empty house and then you like bring in all your furniture, then you bring in all your clothing, then you bring in all your pets, your plants, your energy, your crystals, all of the stuff. All of a sudden, this place feels like home. Same thing with the sun, right? Like she entered our time-space reality, our local sun, and now she's like anchoring herself. It's kind of like now she's like setting up her living room and I don't know, like picking up all her outfits and putting them in the closet somewhere. Pardon me for using this analogy. I'm just trying to bring it home for you guys is all. And I understand I oversimplify. All right. So long story short, as we are in this transition period, the sun is kind of androgynous at this point because, we have this new feminine, 60% of feminine energy that is really here and really anchored. We have the masculine energy that's departing, but it is in the process of departing, right? Like it hasn't departed yet. And then we have that 40% source consciousness that is both, right? So don't freak out that, we're having such a big shift with the sun. Please know that no matter what energy it is, when you're working with the sun, you are getting the most potent stream of high frequency, high vibration, healing energy for your life. And that energy stream, like literally there is nothing else that can substitute your personal connection with the sun. That is why sun gazing every evening, It could be one of the most healing practices. If you guys practice sun gazing, you would notice that source really starts talking to you. It's a beautiful experience. I highly, highly recommend it. Sun breath, right, is also something that's really, really important. Like, you imagine breathing in sun prana and then growing the sun in the middle of your belly. A lot of these things are really, really helpful. All right. Well, let me know in the comments if you have any questions about, the consciousness of the sun. I'm a solar baby. I love talking about the sun. I could probably make like 60 videos like that just about the sun. Let me know if there's anything else around the sun that you have questions about, and I'll try to get back to you. Alrighty. Thank you, my darlings. Sending you a big virtual hug. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.